look at this number. This is estimated Muslim population in UK by percentage from 83 till today. I'm sure you've seen this. 500,000 in 83, 1%. And then it cracked 1 million in 97, 14 years later, and then 2 million, and then 4 million, and then 4.5, some say 5 million today, 6-7% of the population. You have flirted with the concept of wanting to run for prime minister. I heard, whether you're joking or you're being serious, if there is a crazy personality that could pull it off, you probably have the personality to pull it off. But let's just say you do say, you know what, I'm going to get in there and I'm being hired as a, true, strategic, or I'm going to run for this. Do you think this growth, the way it's going right now, getting to 10, 20, 30%, do you think it is a good idea to keep allowing people to come in to combine the Islam way of thinking, what their ideas are, and coexist with the Western ideology?
Well, I think there are issues which are serious to be considered. For example, it's been reported there are as many as potentially 85 unofficial Sharia courts in the UK now, which are not operating under UK law. They're operating in their own law for their own communities. That clearly is not a good thing in a country like the UK. I would say, look, we have a very high Muslim population now, comparative percentage-wise to the United States. In fact, I think we're not far off in terms of total numbers to the whole of America. So we have a lot of Muslims who live in the UK. We've always been a very multicultural, very tolerant place. That's why people want to come and live there, a bit like America. I would say the vast majority, I've said this before and I say it again, the vast majority of Muslims living in the UK have assimilated perfectly well and live perfectly peaceful and lives which contribute to society.
Yeah, guys, I agree with that completely. That's the same thing that kind of happens in the United States of America, I would say, also. But then there's obviously a subsection of every singular group that does come into, our Western countries specifically, right? That refuse to assimilate. They're not really here for the country. They're here because their country is dangerous, right? And so when that happens, they're here to make our money, send money back from the United States of America or any Western country back to their country. They really do not have any interest in adhering to kind of what made whatever country you're in that country. They don't care about the culture. They care about the money, the income, the finances.
The problem is, I think, coming with the sheer volume of people coming in and the sheer volume coming in illegally as well, where, as you've had in the United States, people have actually no idea who these people really are, how radicalized they may be, what their plans may be when they get to the United Kingdom. And then you see the quite disturbing spectacle of protests, say, in London during the Israel-Hamas war, where people are brazenly supporting Hamas in these protests. And, Hamas is a proscribed terror group in the United Kingdom. That should be not happening. So there is a rising concern, which Robinson has tapped into, and some would say, his critics would say, he's fueled it for his own devices, but he's tapped into a genuine concern. And the worrying thing for the government should be that as their popularity plunges, the popularity of people like Robinson and like the Reform Party under Nigel Farage, although those two don't get on, you're seeing a rising sentiment in the UK that we're losing our identity as a country. And what should we do about that? Whilst preserving the UK's historic position of being a welcoming, tolerant country, proudly multicultural, how do you juggle that with the sheer volume of people coming in and the impact that's having on local communities?
In the context of this,
and how do you stop communities developing within communities? In other words, how do you stop the fragmentation of our society, where you have little separate worlds developing in all major cities and towns?
Right.
These are genuine concerns. And for people, in the old days, these used to be shut down, these conversations, by people saying, well, you're racist. We're long past that stage. People now openly talk about this in UK.
Yeah, because now you're able to actually see exactly what has happened, period, right? I mean, you can definitely see, like, whenever you enter into a place and you start to see like little, like, insert whatever the country's name that you want to name, right? Whenever that happens, you start to realize immediately that they didn't come to assimilate. They didn't come to kind of fit in, et cetera, et cetera. They came to bring their culture here. The problem is that they ran from their culture, right? They ran from it. Like, there's something that within their country that they could not stand to the point of legitimately leaving. And then when you bring it to another country, it's like, bro, we live here. We don't want to live in your country, if that makes any sense here. You want to live in ours. So you need to kind of, join the group a little bit, guys, right? Just a tad bit, right? Keep who you are, sure, but join the group a little bit, bro.
Okay, on political shows and so on. And you're no longer just labeled a racist if you express concern about immigration. Everybody feels that this is getting unsustainable. So the question is, what do we do about it?
So you have how many kids? You have four kids? Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 kids, but they're grown, right? They're grown. They're doing
32 down to 13.
Okay. So you do have a 13-year-old.
13-year-old, yeah.
Okay. And then what's the oldest after 13?
32.
Okay.
Oh, well, my youngest boy is 24, then 28,
24,
and 32.
so 13. If you were to start all over again, okay, and you're 25 today, and you're capable, meaning you shine on camera, you're very comfortable being under the fire, that's your comfort zone, you're going to go make money no matter where you go, here, any other country. Would you choose to raise your 4 kids where you're at, or would you move out of the country?
I would, and I would remind people we've been through a lot more difficult times than this. I think a lot gets amplified by social media.
It does.
And that can be a very good thing or a very bad thing. My grandmother was 19 at the start of World War II, and she was 25 when it ended. As she always said to me, I lost 6 of the best years of my life. She said, however, I then went from 25 to 94 and had a brilliant 70 years after that. So imagine living through World War II. Imagine the kind of conversations you and I would have been having about that, about the impending threat of Nazi domination, of Nazis taking over the UK. We've faced bigger challenges than this. This is a challenge that's come, in my opinion, across the whole of Europe. The sweeping migration, much of it coming from countries that have been at war, whether it's Syria, Iraq, or wherever it may be. But you've had millions and millions and millions of people deposed from their homes or fleeing war-torn situations and sweeping across the continent of Europe and wanting a better life for their families, which I completely understand.
Right.
But it has got unsustainable. And it's not just a problem for the UK, it's a problem for Germany, for France,
all the Western
for
countries.
many of the European countries.
Yeah.
They're all facing the same challenges. Nobody at the moment, it seems to me, has a clear idea of what we do about this, other than I look at somewhere like the United States. I look at the way Donald Trump just slammed the brakes on the southern border almost instantaneously and reduced the number of people coming in from 2.5 million a year to literally a couple of thousand a month, right? And you look at that and you think, well, okay, you can control borders.
Down.
You just have to have the determination to do it. I also think Trump has universal support in America when he says that anyone who's here illegally in the United States who then commits a crime outside of their immigration status should be deported. Where the flashpoint comes, and where it's an interesting thing as to whether other countries like the UK follow the Trump philosophy on this, is where you start deporting people who have been here for a number of years illegally, but who have been maybe working, paying taxes, contributing to society, bringing up kids and so on. What do you do with those people? I understand that they want to create an atmosphere of you have to come in legally, and if you don't, then you can't stay here. I understand that, but you don't want America to lose its inherent sense of compassion and empathy either. And I think some of the images for me of ICE running into Home Depot and grabbing people who are undocumented and wanting to throw them out, living in LA as I do a lot of the time, the fear that's engendered amongst the community in LA is not a good thing. So I think there's a balance to be struck here, albeit you cannot look at Trump's overall immigration policy and not think it's been extremely effective so far. And you've got to look at the hypocrisy of the left when they go after Trump. It's like my favorite question for my lefty friends, my liberal woke friends. And I used to identify happily as liberal. I just find nothing in common with these people. But I say to them, how many people did Barack Obama deport in 8 years as president? They
don't want to hear that.
Never know, for one.
Don't ask them that.
They can tell exactly how many Trump has, but they never know how many Obama did. And then I tell them it's 3 million people. Just Google it. You can Google it. So A, they don't want to know. B, when they find out, they're completely shocked. C, I said he was known as Deporter-in-Chief in Mexico.
Yeah.
Right, that was his nickname.
That's right.
Right, this guy deported more people pro rata per year than any president in the history of the United States, and yet the same rules do not apply to Obama.
They sure do not.
Than do to people like Trump. So I think there's a lot to learn from the way Trump's gone about it, albeit with some caveats.
When we set out to create,
and guys, and like that's literally why you take everything that people say with like a grain of salt, because it's like, listen, guys, what do you mean? So your savior, let's just say this here, Obama, Barack Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, okay, did all of these things this kind of the same way, but the only difference is that Trump is doing it and Trump is bad, so he's not allowed to do anything for the United States of America that's meaningful or beneficial. No, because Trump is doing it. They just hate Trump. They don't hate the overall policy. They just hate Trump. That's it. That's kind of the vibe I get also from it. Guys, listen, I don't think I've ever really heard or sat down and listened to Piers Morgan actually speak kind of about his overall view on some things. And this is intriguing to me, truthfully here. I want to know what is he politically? As a matter of fact, it doesn't even matter. Let's just say this here, because it's not going to change my opinion that I'm about to state here. I think I should probably watch more Piers Morgan because he seems to have like an overall balanced view, not too much of an extremist going in either direction. And I think I like that generally. I think that basically is kind of me for the most part in how I look at things generally. Because my main issue specifically when it comes to like DACA and things like that, I'm just like, they've been here. They were like brought in when they were babies. You know, I don't know about them. Leave them alone for a second. Leave them alone. The parents, though, maybe they need to go, but they did something illegal. Okay, there should be no one that is generally by default kind of above like the law, right? There should be no one that's above the law or considered above the law. And we go after people that have been charged that did something 20 years ago, guys, okay? Based off the crime itself, statute of limitations, et cetera, et cetera. We go after people, all right? We sure do, all right? So we need to kind of figure that out there. If they commit the crime, then obviously they need to not, be in the United States of America. I think that's just kind of how that works in my head, at least, because I do not like criminality. I do think that if you do something that's criminal by default, you should probably be faced with that regardless of whatever, bro. You should not be above the law. But yeah, that's it. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm happy that the border is not moving the way that it was moving before. The gotaways kind of slowed down. Yeah, and all of these things. I think that this is great. 94.7% down. We can now kind of hopefully some of these cities can start focusing on the people who kind of pay into the taxes and the overall tax base, start doing things that actually benefit the actual community rather than people who broke into the country. That'll be a great idea. That's kind of how I look at that. That's kind of how I have looked at that. But it's all rooted in the fact that I am not a fan of criminality by default, right? So when I think of something, right, it's like, Right? But now, is it also a problem with the overall asylum process? It's a problem, I think. Truthfully, I think it's a problem. We need to have better guidelines and make sure we follow these guidelines here. If 80 to 90% of the individuals that came in specifically via the asylum process are not going to qualify for actually asylum, then maybe we shouldn't have given them asylum in the first place, right? So we need a better like immediate process to basically figure out if the person that is coming in is for economic migrancy or asylum fraud, or specifically an actual refugee that needs some assistance, right? Do we need to be callous to people who need help? No, but if you're coming under the guise of fraud, then you need to go. I think that's how that works here, in my head at least. Guys, do you want to watch movies with me? I never actually thought to like promote it over here, guys. But if you guys do want to watch it, guys, we have hundreds of movies. And I mean hundreds of movies that we've reacted to. You guys can come watch them with me if you want to, along with many TV shows. Currently, we're working on the show Dexter, along with Vikings. And we have a lot of series that are already completed. But if you guys do want to watch it with me, the link is in the description. Everything's available at the second tier. But of course, if that's not your thing, guys, don't worry, right? Listen, like and subscribe.